The New York Rangers stage an epic comeback, scoring 5 goals in the final 6 minutes to pick up an awesome 6-4 preseason win over the Islanders. Plus, we've got injury updates on Ryan Lindgren, Filip, and Artemi Panarin.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1147 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. So I want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Got to also give a special shout out to Passafire. Really appreciate them continuing to allow us to use their awesome song, Leave the Lights On, for the intro of this podcast. Definitely want to shout out the guys in Passafire for that as we enter a new season of New York Ranger hockey. And what an awesome win last night for the New York Rangers. I tweeted this out not too long ago, but is it safe to call this the greatest preseason win in New York Ranger history? I mean, I can't even really think of another notable preseason game. I'm sure they exist, but by the time the regular season starts, pretty much all this stuff goes into the rear view and nobody even really thinks about the preseason after that. But man, I mean, you talk about an epic win. You know, you're down 4-1 late in this game. You score a bunch of goals. You score 2 goals while your goalie is pulled. You not only do that, because at that point, you know, you score the 2 goals, you think, okay, well, we're going to go to overtime. After scoring the 2 goals, with Jonathan Quick pulled out of the net, they score another goal at even strength. Then they add another empty net goal. Just a wild win and a frenetic finish to this game. Just a ton of fun. I wanted to go ahead and start off today's episode by breaking down this comeback, because this was, if this was a regular season game, which I really wish that it was, it would be up there at the end of the year as far as best wins of the season. But you know what? It's never too late to set a tone. It's never too late if you're the Rangers to kind of reinforce the fact that this team is never, ever out of a game. They've got a ton of offensive firepower. They can always come back. And I think mentally, this is a team that's tough in that way. A team that's not going to give up on themselves. I know that whole no quit in New York thing, it's a little bit cliche and whatnot, but the sooner you establish this being what your team is all about, a team that's going to fight for 60 minutes, the better off you're going to be. And I think this is a really nice win for the Rangers and hopefully a trend setter as the regular season begins in just a couple of weeks here. I believe 2 weeks to the day is when the New York Rangers kick off their regular season. On the flip side of that, look at the Islanders. This is a team that last year really struggled in the third period, really struggled more specifically protecting leads in the third period. That was on full display in the outdoor game between the Rangers and the Islanders. I can't be the only Ranger fan that thought of that game while this game was happening last night and while the Rangers were completing their comeback. Because if you remember, the Rangers did the same thing there. They were down, I think they were down by 3 goals, but they were definitely down by 2 goals when they initially pulled their goalie, and they scored 2 goals with their net empty, and then Panarin won the game in overtime. So definitely was kind of a throwback to what happened between these two teams last year. Plants a little bit of a seed of doubt for the Islanders. You know, I got to believe that's in their head at least a little bit. Why can't we close out games? And the Rangers kind of added fuel to that fire in this preseason matchup last night. But I want to go ahead and break down some of the plays, the more impressive plays that allowed the Rangers to complete, once again, a very improbable comeback win, and for my money, the greatest preseason win in the history of this franchise. You guys can let me know if there was anything else that happened, decades ago, and this happened in the preseason, and this is why that was important. But this is awesome. So first of all, you got the Islanders going up 4-1 on a power play goal. Brennan Othmann clearly made a play on the puck and touched it, and there was a delayed penalty, and that should have been the end of, or there should have been a play stoppage, and the Islanders would have gone to the power play. Instead, it kept going, and the Islanders score, and they go up 4-1. So at this point, you're thinking it's probably just not going to be our night, but the Rangers come roaring back. They get on the power play. You've got Mika, Kreider, Smith, Chytil, and Fox. That was the top power play unit for a lot of this night, so a little bit of a hybrid there. I mean, really, it's just Chytil and Smith stepping in place of Panarin and Chytil. But it was interesting to see them kind of mix and match as far as the power play units were concerned. And Panarin by that point in the game wasn't available anyway. But bottom line, a little bit of a hybrid power play situation. Mika Zibanejad took a shot. There was a lot of good passing here. You got the face-off win to begin with. Mika fought to get the puck along the boards. He goes up the boards to Kreider. Kreider sends it over to Smith. Smith back to Fox. Over to Mika. Quick shot by Mika Zibanejad. Shot was inadvertently blocked by Chris Kreider, but it went right to Filip. So Kreider ends up with the primary here after Filip buries it. 4-2 at this point with 6 minutes to go. And then you have Jonathan Quick being pulled with 3:20 remaining in regulation. Rangers still down by 2 goals at this point. You've got Jacob Trouba. Nice play by Trouba here. We've been a little bit tough on Jacob Trouba throughout the preseason. I think, certainly Ranger fans expect more than what they got from him last year in the playoffs. But you know what? It's time to turn the page on that. Here's hoping that Jacob Trouba has a nice bounce back season and has an effective season as the captain of this team. But he carries the puck up the boards, did a really nice job kind of protecting and shielding the puck there. He didn't have a lot of room to maneuver. He had a couple of defenders bearing down on him, but he's able to nevertheless make a pass across the ice. It bounces off the boards, goes right to Zach Jones. I feel like Trouba may have been passing for Mika Zibanejad here. He didn't have a whole lot of room to operate, like I said, and he was under a ton of pressure. But whether that's what he was doing or not, it worked out beautifully because it goes out the boards, goes right to Zach Jones. Jones blasts a shot, and now it's 4-3 after Jones scores his second goal of the game with 2:12 remaining, and the Rangers looking to complete this comeback. So then, we continue on here. You've got Mika from the blue line over to Trocheck. He's also along the blue line. Trocheck then passes to the center of the ice, to the inside of the left circle, and just a brilliant pass by Lafreniere. Lafreniere immediately, turned and got the puck over to Kreider. Excellent puck moving here all around by the New York Rangers. Lafreniere finds Kreider. Kreider's at a little bit of a sharp angle, but as soon as this pass started heading toward Chris Kreider, I felt like this was going to be a goal. Again, or more than 2 really, but the final 2 passes, one from Trocheck and especially the second one by Lafreniere, brilliant passes. They get it over to Kreider. Kreider stuffs it home just like that, 4-4. And at this point, 3 goals in 4:51. But it gets even better because then with 42 seconds to go, offensive zone faceoff for the Rangers. Trocheck wins the faceoff, gets a little bit of help from Lafreniere in terms of, getting control of the puck. Lafreniere moves it back to Jones on the blue line. Jones over to Trouba on the right side. Trouba shoots, and the puck goes into the net. I thought Trouba may have scored clean here, but as it turns out, Adam Edstrom continuing his fantastic preseason. He was awesome in the 2-game rookie series. He was awesome in this game last night. More on Adam Edstrom and a couple of other young players that stepped up in this game a little bit later in today's episode. But for right now, Edstrom with the deflection in front of the net. Rangers score 5-4. They lead. And then Chris Kreider steals the deal. Empty net goal with 10 seconds to go on a breakaway after the Rangers had gotten the puck out of their zone. So awesome stuff. Again, it's only the preseason. There's that part of me that just so badly wants this to count in the standings. And that could be the first game of the regular season, right? But again, I think this is a positive thing. You're reestablishing your identity as a team that does not throw in the towel, as a team that is mentally tough, and as a team that is never out of a game, especially when you consider how many offensive weapons that the New York Rangers have. Very encouraging performance here, and a little bit of a maybe confidence shaker for the New York Islanders. Time is going to tell there. Certainly, we're ways away from the regular season starting here. Both these teams have a handful of games remaining, but very, very encouraging comeback win for the Rangers in this preseason game. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. We've got some injury updates on Ryan Lindgren, who reportedly is going to be out for at least a few weeks. Also going to talk about Filip and Artemi Panarin, who also each sustained injuries in this game. And we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite team even faster and even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands upon thousands of tickets. Gametime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You've also got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with none of those annoying surprise fees at checkout. You've also got seat views. This is one of my favorite features in any ticketing app ever, and it's one of the reasons why I always turn to Gametime. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. That way there's no surprises whenever you get to the arena, the theater, the stadium, whatever it might be. You've also got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Also, Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is Gametime. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com right now and get in the game. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out, as always, to the everydayers. It means the world that you guys, continue to stick with this New York Ranger podcast, 24/7, 365, whatever you want to call it, all the way around the calendar and certainly the NHL calendar. And we're gearing up here. We're 2 games into the preseason, 4 more preseason games to go, and then they all start counting for real. But looking ahead, we're going to, in our next episode, talk about whatever happens between the Rangers and the Bruins on Thursday, who improves their chances to make this team, who might be on the penalty kill, the power play, whatever it might be, whatever developments occur in that game against the Bruins. And also going to go ahead and continue our best and worst case scenarios. Keandre Miller is next on that list. But for right now, let's go ahead and continue talking about this game. Unfortunately, after such an epic win and such a fun win by the Rangers last night against the Islanders, I wanted the entire episode to just be about the good stuff, but unfortunately, we had 3 high-profile, very important players on the New York Rangers sustain injuries of varying degrees in this game. First, we'll start with Filip. We'll basically just go in the order that the injuries occurred during this game. So it's early. It's the first period, maybe about midway through, give or take. You've got Mayfield laying in a big hit on Filip at center ice. You watch the replay, left knee on left thigh. I don't really think that this was anything malicious or intentional by Mayfield. To me, this honestly just looked like 2 players colliding. So I'm not going to be calling for a suspension or a fine or anything like that. But as soon as you see Filip down on the ice, I mean, you show me a Ranger fan on this planet who's not holding their breath and who is not concerned about Filip. And the fans weren't the only ones concerned. Apparently, per John Giannone, when this happened, every Ranger on the bench was, kind of holding their breath and asking each other what happened. Was it dirty? Is he okay? Is it the upper body, the lower, whatever they might have been talking about? But every Ranger on the bench, very, very concerned about the health of Filip. Meanwhile, as this is happening, as Filip down on the ice, and as the trainer is going out there to tend to him, we've got Ryan Lindgren challenging Mayfield to a fight, basically on the other side of the ice. The Filip injury was right around the red line, and then there was the fight that broke out deep in, I want to say, the Ranger zone, one of the zones or the other ones. But yeah, Lindgren and Mayfield obviously went at it. And we'll get back to Chytil in just a second. Quick detour here because we got to talk about the fight. Lindgren, in just one shift here, basically showed everybody, reminded me why he is one of my favorite players, and also why I, like many of you, have certain reservations about the Rangers giving him any kind of a long-term deal. He obviously was a restricted free agent this past offseason. How long is it going to be? How much dollars per year? And then we find out it's only a 1-year extension, and Lindgren will be a UFA after the season. 2 things can be true. Ryan Lindgren can be the heart and soul of this team and somebody that's always going to go out there and watch out for his teammates and play tough as nails, blue-collar, old-school hockey. That's one thing. And the other thing is that this is somebody that is susceptible to injuries and whose game may not age as well as some other defensemen in the league. Both of those things can be true. I think both of those things are true. But you do have to give it up to Ryan Lindgren, going and facing somebody who's bigger than him, being willing to drop the gloves and, get into a fight. As far as Chytil, getting back to Chytil now, eventually he gets back up. You had Trocheck and Hoffman were both helping him off the ice. The trainers were there too as well. But he wasn't able to put a whole ton of weight on his left leg. And lo and behold, we're all nervous. First of all, I think there's some relief, certainly for me and probably for a lot of you as well, that it became pretty obvious, okay, it's not a concussion. It's nothing having to do with his head or his neck or anything like that. Anytime Filip goes down on the ice, I think we're all going to hold our breath a little bit, and that's going to be at least in the back of our minds somewhat. But you see this, it's not good news, but it's better news than it may be another head injury, another concussion injury, because that would just be absolutely heartbreaking. But lo and behold, we're all holding our breath and wondering how bad this is going to be. Filip was back out there on the bench with about 4 minutes to go in the first period, and he jumped back onto the ice for another shift with about a minute to go in the first. And at that point, he was all systems go for the rest of this game, ended up having another really strong game for himself. It's really nice to see this. Peter Laviolette wants to get Filip as many reps as possible. He's made that clear. He said before the game, I keep playing him because I need him to get the confidence. And Filip looks like a very confident player right now, certainly in that first game against the Bruins, and just as much so in this game here, despite having, kind of a scary moment and suffering that injury. Maybe it was a little bit of a Charlie horse kind of a situation, but he gets back up, goes back onto the ice, and is one of the Rangers' best players for the rest of the game at that point. While we're talking about the players that played in both games, I want to say it was just Chytil, Othmann, and Jake Leschyshyn, kind of an interesting bunch. Othmann, you can see why, because they're trying to see if, he's going to make the team or not. Leschyshyn just kind of feels random, but that's fine. He got into both games. And Filip, like we were talking about, like Peter Laviolette mentioned, he's going to need some reps given how much time that he missed last season. But I think it's very encouraging that Filip got back into this game, because think about it. This is the second game of the preseason. And you know what? The regular season will be upon us before we know it. It's 2 weeks away. We're going to blink and it'll be here. But you got to believe, if there was any concern as to what Filip did to his leg, if they had any issues about or reservations about, he could hurt himself worse, or maybe we should just err on the side of caution, you got to believe that Filip would not have gone back into that game. The fact that he was right back out there in the first period, you got to believe that Chytil was feeling good and the trainers didn't find anything and they were completely comfortable with putting him back on the ice, because why would you risk it at all? If this injury is even a slight concern as far as him possibly making it worse, then there'd be no reason to play him back out there in the second preseason game. Filip does not have to make this team. It's just a question of whether he's healthy or not. If he's healthy, he's going to be your third line center on opening night. And we will go ahead and keep our fingers crossed that, that ends up being the case. It's great to see him score another goal here as well. So got to keep going with the injuries. We'll shift our attention to Ryan Lindgren. We talked about him briefly as far as the fight that he got into. He ended up, after this fight, getting 17 minutes in penalty time, which is kind of standard for what happened here. First of all, obviously the 5 for fighting, right? They're also, the NHL that is, starting to give out the 2-minute instigator penalty a little bit more often, which I think is a good thing. I don't think you should always have to fight for your life every time that you make a solid hit on somebody and knock somebody to the ice. So he got hit with the 2-minute instigator as well, and also the 10-minute game misconduct. But that was all really a moot point, because Ryan Lindgren was never going to come back into this game anyway. He got into the fight, and it looked like at the end, he was on the receiving end of a pretty nasty uppercut and was somewhat dazed from it. So he went to the locker room and, like I said, never came back. And as is always the case with the Rangers and really the NHL in general, they're being pretty mum on the injury. All we get out of them, say it with me, what injury did Ryan Lindgren sustain in this game? An upper body injury. That's all we had to go by. So I don't want to speculate too much, but it does look like, that punch landed pretty, solidly there. And we are getting word that Ryan Lindgren will be out for at least a few weeks. So even in a best case scenario, if we take that very, very literally, a few weeks to me is 2 weeks at an absolute bare minimum. It sounds like it could be more than that, but that would rule him out certainly for opening night against Pittsburgh. And that does kind of open the door, and it's unfortunate that this happened, but that does open the door for some competition among some of the other Ranger defensemen. A couple of prospects, a couple of veterans could have their names in the hat at this point. We'll see. And we're actually going to talk about that in greater detail a little bit later. But for the time being, it's a big loss for the Rangers. Ryan Lindgren is somebody that has played on the top pairing and played very well there for years. I think that he's always clicked very well with Adam Fox. Adam Fox, of course, one of the elite defensemen in this league, and he's done basically everything that he's done in the NHL with Ryan Lindgren as his defense partner. So it is a blow to the Rangers. We'll discuss how they can look to kind of circumnavigate that a little bit later. And obviously, all the best to Ryan Lindgren, and we all keep our fingers crossed now that he can get back out there sooner rather than later. And that brings us to Artemi Panarin. I did not see any injury happen to Artemi Panarin. I think that the cameras didn't happen to catch it. I don't know too many people that did see the injury that happened to Artemi Panarin, but he apparently, with about 10 minutes to go in this game, went down to the tunnels, into the locker room, and he never came back after that. Certainly, we would have seen Artemi Panarin on the ice if he was available during, the final stretch of this game when the Rangers were scoring all those goals. But yeah, he wasn't there. Laviolette said after the game that it was a lower body injury and that he is considered day-to-day. So that's an encouraging sign as well. I mean, that's another vague hockey sports term, day-to-day, but that's better than the alternative. We don't want to hear that Panarin's going to be out for a few weeks or anything like that. Panarin was not practicing earlier today on Wednesday, but it also does not sound like the Rangers are overly concerned with the injury. So obviously we dodge a bullet there. As far as how the Rangers lined up at practice today, I found this kind of interesting as well. pretty much everything was intact, but you had Jimmy Vesey skating in Panarin's spot on the second line with Vincent Trocheck and Alexis Lafreniere. The Rangers left the Mika line intact. They left the Chytil line intact. And then the fourth line was Edstrom, Brodzinski, and Rempe. And the defense pairings were Mackey and Fox. That's interesting as well, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Miller and Trouba, no surprises there. Ruhwedel and Schneider, and then a fourth pairing of Jones and Mancini. So, as far as Vesey playing there, if Panarin has to miss any time, and again, they said day-to-day, so to me, that sounds like he's at least probable for opening night. I don't think that you'd call somebody day-to-day if they're in danger of not playing in a game 2 weeks from now, and of course, the opener is exactly 2 weeks from today. But yeah, I like Vesey in that spot. Vesey is somebody that I think is best suited for a bottom 6 role. But as we've talked about before on this podcast, he can play the top 6 in a pinch. You can leave him there for a couple of games, and he'll do just fine for himself. But yeah, for the long haul, I like Vesey in a bottom 6 role. But for the time being, fine, I think, to stick him out there with Trocheck and with Lafreniere. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. There were a handful of Ranger players, quite a few, in fact, that I would say saw their stock kind of increase. We're talking about guys that are trying to carve out big roles for themselves on this team, maybe in some cases just trying to make the team in general. We're going to talk about some of those players, a couple of players who I think also their stock maybe fell a little bit in this game as well. We're going to ID all those players in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to hire or isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with quality candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit. To get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon, just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Figure we can close out today's episode by talking a little bit about some of the players that I thought improved their stock as far as, making the team or carving out a big role for themselves on this team, and also a couple of players that maybe did not do that, did the opposite of that. As far as the lineup in this game, and we'll go through this quickly just to kind of set the stage for anybody that may not have been able to catch this preseason matchup. Top line, Kreider, Mika, and Smith. I thought, overall they did well. Laviolette had good things to say about them. Said that there was something there, as far as Riley Smith gelling with Mika and Kreider. But the more reps those three can get together, the better. I do think that Smith can, should, and will be the best option for the Rangers to play with Mika and Kreider when it comes to opening night. And it sounds like he's got the inside track, and he'll be given every opportunity to win that role. You had a second line of Berard, Trocheck, and Lafreniere, and a third line of Panarin, Chytil, and Othmann. So Artemi Panarin, bottom 6 extraordinaire forward in the NHL. I mean, that's all semantics. I actually like the way they did this. It would have been easy to just leave Panarin with Trocheck and Lafreniere and just go from there. But in doing it this way, you give both Berard and Othmann the opportunity to play with, two bona fide big-time NHL players. You've got Berard out there with Trocheck and Lafreniere, and you've got Othmann out there with Panarin and Chytil. And so, obviously, these guys get a chance to play with some, again, established NHL players and some very, very good NHL players, and just see, how they did with it, or how they do with it. You've also got a fourth line of Edstrom, Jake Leschyshyn, Matt Rempe. I thought this line had a really nice night. More on that in a little bit. You've got a top defense pairing of Lindgren and Fox, and obviously once Lindgren went down, they had to kind of mix and match the rest of the way, going with 5 defensemen for the majority of the evening. The second pairing, Zach Jones and Jacob Trouba, and the third pairing, Ben Harpur and Chad Ruhwedel. Jones and Trouba is interesting. There's a lot of debate, conjecture about what Trouba's role is going to be at the start of the season. Will they leave him on that second pairing with K'Andre Miller, or will you see him on the third pairing with Zach Jones? I think it's going to be the former. I think they're going to put Jacob Trouba back into his familiar top 4 role. Certainly nothing is set in stone there. I just get the feeling that they're going to default to the old pairings and give the captain a chance to sort of redeem himself and reclaim his spot in the top 4. Of course, the Lindgren injury could throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into all that. And again, we are working our way to talking about that situation and how the Rangers might, try to go forward without Ryan Lindgren. But yeah, a couple guys. We got 3 guys here specifically that I think their stock went up after this game, and 2 guys I'm going to say I think the stock may have gone down a little bit. Let's start with the stock up guys. I'm going to start with Zach Jones. This one's pretty obvious. 2 goals and an assist. Those are the obvious positives. I found it interesting because when the Rangers were coming, out of the commercial break, second intermission is over. Puck's about to drop. Third period's about to be underway. Rosen and Micheletti mentioned that Phil Housley had said that he wants to see Zach Jones get a little bit more involved, get a little bit more involved with the offense and whatnot. And I would say that Phil Housley got what he wanted because Jones looked like he was shot out of a cannon for basically this entire third period and just played great hockey, had the couple of goals that he had and had an assist as well. But the other thing here, the other kind of subplot is the injury to Ryan Lindgren. And certainly I don't wish injury on any player in the NHL. I would never wish injury on anybody, especially players on the Rangers. But players do get injured. That's just like a cold, hard reality of sports. I was going to say professional sports, but it's really just sports in general. And that spot is now open, and it's entirely possible when this season begins, when opening night is finally upon us, that Zach Jones is the guy that is tabbed to be out there with Adam Fox on that top pairing. We saw the 2 of them play together when Jones was first called up. We're going back like 4 years at this point, 4 seasons at this point. And Zach Jones got called up for like 10 games at the end of a season. The Rangers were sort of, kind of, but not really in the playoff chase. They were probably about like, 7 or 8 points out with like, 10 or 12 games to go, whatever it was. So I guess they had a shot. But the bottom line, they called Jones up and they let him get a little bit of a trial run with the Rangers, about 10 games. And he was out there for a good chunk of that with Adam Fox. And I thought the 2 of them seemed to play pretty well together. You're going to get some excellent passing from those 2 as a defense pair. You don't have much in the way of size or physicality, so some people might find fault with that being a pairing for that reason. And there's merit to that as well. But yeah, Zach Jones, he coming into training camp, I think certainly had the inside track to being the number 6 defenseman and being out there on opening night. It's basically at this point an absolute slam dunk that Zach Jones will be on the ice on opening night. It's just a matter of how the Rangers choose to use him. I get the feeling, like I said, we're going to see him out there with Adam Fox on opening night. I think there's a very good chance. And the fact that Jones continues to play well, continues to, in this case, score a couple of goals, play solid hockey, I think that only obviously helps his cause to ultimately doing that. We saw Zach Jones make a lot of good plays in this game. It wasn't just the goals and the assist. He was on the power play. There was one power play. This happened twice. Within probably about 15 or 20 seconds of each other. It looked like the Islanders were going to be able to clear the zone, and both times Jones at the blue line able to knock the puck down, keep it in the offensive zone, keep the offensive threat alive. A couple of nice plays there by Zach Jones. We also saw Zach Jones play on the penalty kill in this game. He had a timely clear there as well, and even at practice earlier today, we usually see Lindgren and Trouba together on the penalty kill. Apparently, at practice, a little bit earlier today, before I hit record here, it was Jones and Trouba. So we might see Zach Jones. He might be all over the ice. He's going to play, obviously at even strength. We know that. But he might be on the top pairing for even strength. He very well could be on the second power play unit when the regular season begins. And now it's looking like he might be one of the 4 go-to defensemen when it comes to the penalty kill as well. So Zach Jones looks to be tabbed for a big role start the season, and he played very, very well in this game. And at this point, there can be no debate. Zach Jones will be out there on opening night for the New York Rangers one way or the other. I think another player stock up, I'm going to go Adam Edstrom, goal and an assist. We covered his goal already when we were talking about, the big Ranger comeback, obviously the deflection that gave the Rangers the lead, the game-winning goal for Adam Edstrom. But man, this guy just continues to bring it every single night. He, far and away, the best player in the 2-game rookie set between the Rangers and the Flyers. He just jumped off the screen. He was all over the place, scored 3 goals. He was physical in this game. I believe he was credited with 4 hits. He's out there with Matt Rempe and Jake Leschyshyn on the 4th line, taking advantage of every minute that he was on the ice. A couple of other plays as well. There was one where the Islanders were looking to clear the zone, and a very aggressive play here by Edstrom. He read the play. He came up. He intercepted the pass, and that kept the puck in the Islanders' zone. Led to a scoring chance for the Rangers. They were not able to convert, but just a really good showing of like really good hockey instincts there by Adam Edstrom. And Sam and Joe made this comparison too, but I'm sure a lot of you thought of it as well, and I'll say it right here just for all of us. There are definitely parallels between what Adam Edstrom is doing this offseason and what Will Cooley did last offseason. Two guys that, coming into training camp, the preseason and whatnot, I think you look at them as probably, well, less than 50-50 that this guy's going to make the team. But man, Will Cooley really gave the Ranger coaching staff something to think about last season. And of course, he made the team and never looked back. He was with the Rangers all year. Something very similar could be happening with Adam Edstrom here. If he continues to play this way, and it's hard to see, who now does not make the team because Adam Edstrom is here. So I get that. But man, if you continue to play this well, you continue to show a scoring touch, you're all over the ice. He was out there killing penalties with Matt Rempe and doing a good job in that role as well. He's scoring goals. He's got size. He's got strength. He's got physical. I mean, how do you keep this guy off the roster if he continues to do everything that he's been doing this first handful of game action that he's had here? So that was awesome. We also have to talk about just an awesome play that Edstrom made on a goal that ended up being scored by Zach Jones. It's honestly, I think, the only Ranger goal that we didn't talk about at least a little bit, but this was awesome. So Islanders have the puck. They're up 3-0. They have the puck in the Ranger zone. Edstrom with a big hit along the boards in the Ranger zone. And right after this, the puck goes to an Islander defenseman. He takes the shot. Zach Jones blocks the shot. It goes to Edstrom. Jones takes off, and Edstrom leads him up the ice on a breakaway. A little forehand backhand by Zach Jones on the doorstep, and he scores. But I just thought this was two excellent plays by each of these players. You had Edstrom with a hit and a perfect pass. You had Jones with a shot block and then a goal on a breakaway. So good stuff there. And those are the two players that we talked about for stock up, obviously. The third player that I've got for stock up, Rempe Mania. I thought Matt Rempe looked very, very good in this game. I mentioned that he was actually out there killing penalties alongside Adam Edstrom, and I thought he looked pretty good in that role, as did Edstrom. Rempe had a clear. He also skated the puck out of the zone, was able to weave his way out of the Ranger zone while they were shorthanded, dumped the puck and went off for a change. There was another play where he almost was able to score on a breakaway. You had the Islanders with the puck in the Ranger zone at the blue line. Rempe goes over there, really challenges this guy very aggressively, takes the puck away, picks it up in the neutral zone, goes in up the right side. It wasn't like a clean breakaway. There were a couple of Islanders, racing to get back, but he got to the net. Was able to take a shot, and it went just wide of the far post. But, what I love here with Rempe is that we are now talking about, his hockey prowess. Look, the fighting, the hitting, all that stuff is important. All that stuff plays big. That's going to be Rempe's calling card. I think we all know that. But you want him to be a complete, well-rounded player, and he wants to do that as well. So the fact that I'm on here, and he had some big hits in this game, some pretty solid hits, didn't fight or anything like that. That's going to be part of his game, like I just said. But the fact that we're on here talking about encouraging hockey plays that Matt Rempe made, very, very good. Very, very, I think that bodes well for him going forward. But we shall see what happens next. Stock down, I'm going to say Brett Berard. He, to me, looks a little bit nervous right now when he has the puck. There was a play early in this game where Lafreniere stole the puck in the Ranger zone, pass across the ice, perfect pass to lead Berard up the ice, and Berard's behind everybody, and Berard on the doorstep just kind of fumbled the puck, never got a shot away, so that was unfortunate. Just not been quite as noticeable as I think that a lot of us maybe thought that he would, and that's okay. He's still a very young player, former fifth-round pick. If he starts the season in the AHL, which was always the most likely outcome anyway, then that's okay. He can continue to hone his craft there and hopefully climb the ranks. And if the Rangers need a call up at some point in the season, then I'm sure he'll be ready. I also thought Ben Harpur had a tough night. And Harpur, that's unfortunate because he's kind of been through it the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, he earned a spot on the Rangers, played fairly well. They did the trade with St. Louis to bring in Tarasenko and Mikkola, lost his job to Mikkola for no other reason really other than Mikkola is just the superior defenseman. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. But then last year with the AHL, he scores a goal, but falls down, hurts his shoulder, and is out for the entire season. And now probably trying to get back up to speed. There were a couple of times, though, where it looked like some defenders were able to get around him with pretty relative ease in this game. But Harpur, like a lot of Ranger defensemen, and I mentioned this earlier that we were eventually going to circle around to this and talk about it. Harpur, Scanlon, Mackey, Fitzgerald, all these like veteran defensemen, these journeyman defensemen, they've all got an opportunity now. And again, it really sucks to lose Ryan Lindgren, and the Rangers are going to be hurting for that. Their record when Lindgren is in the lineup versus when he is out of the lineup is incredible, the difference that there is there. So it's a big loss for the team, but now we get to see these veterans and even some rookies, some guys like Matthew Robertson possibly, although he's dealing with what I believe is a minor injury, and Victor Mancini, who's impressed a lot of people. All these guys are going to be duking it out, trying to claim that spot. And I think that on opening night, Zach Jones is for sure going to be in the lineup. We know that. I think you're probably looking at Chad Ruhwedel opening the season as the number 6 defenseman. But if the Rangers decide to go with one of the young defensemen, say either Robertson or more likely Mancini, then I think you'll see the youngster in the lineup, probably Mancini, and Ruhwedel will stay in the 7th defenseman role. But we'll see how the whole thing shakes out. It will be an interesting battle to watch going forward here for the rest of training camp and the preseason as well. Figure we can pretty much call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.